G'day everyone, ScottyD here from the Australis Tabletop Wargaming Network, and welcome to our new series, From Sprue to Tabletop. Alrighty everyone, so to give you a brief run through of what this series is going to be about, if you've dropped by any of my Twitch streams that we do here on the ATWN where I'm doing hobbying sessions, you may see a variety of different techniques and armies that I do painting for my own collections, and you may be wondering, how do I achieve some of the techniques or looks that I do and how I've learned how to do them over the years. So this series is going to be delving into, in a tutorialized format, how I go about hobbying and explain to you guys my methods, my techniques, and how I do things and my thought processes behind each of them. And so we're going to look at a couple of different models that I work on for my various armies and take them literally from sprue to a tabletop finish where they are what I consider to be raid ready, as well as also being fully based as well. We're going to do this across a couple of different factions with a couple of different hobbying techniques, so you guys are able to see some different methods that I'm either using currently or looking to use in the future, and kind of explain my thought processes of them, and so you're able to see how I actually achieve the looks that I achieve on stream. So today's video, we're going to be kicking off by talking about taking the model off the sprue and cleaning up all of the mold lines on the miniatures, and kind of talking about the tools that I use, the different processes that I go through when I'm doing this step. So let's jump into it. Alrighty, so as we have got the sprue for the assault intercessors right in front of us, we're going to start working on the sergeant for the unit. And whilst I do have the bases for all of them in front of me, we're only going to be working on building the one today. In this video, what we're digging into, as I've said, we're looking at taking the model off the sprue as well as cleaning up the mold lines from it. So I just want to walk through a bit of the tools that I do prefer to use. So I use a lot of army painter tools currently. We have got the army painter. Now these are the metal clippers, as I've found their plastic clippers from a while ago weren't as good, but I haven't used their current ones that they do produce. But I find that these are quite nice and heavy duty. They do clip quite aggressively, so you need to be very careful when you are clipping right up against the plastic, and just bear that in mind. Now I do use a well aged and used old Citadel hobby knife. When I am cleaning my mold lines, I do swap the blades out when necessary as well, when they do get more dull. But this is out of production. So another one you could find if you are wanting to stick with, say, army painter products, is you can use the army painter hobby knife as well. You just loosen it down the bottom and you can swap out the blades really easily. It's not as, I don't find it as comfortable to use as the old Citadel one, but it is a good one. But also find the hobby knife that you do enjoy using and make sure that you're able to get as much use out of it. I always tend to have a set of spare blades with me, or two sets, depending on how low they're getting in my hobby kit. And then also I do use some of these smaller hobby files. From memory, these were army painter ones as well. So you've got a couple of different ones where you've got a flat, but it's got the triangles on the sides. On the back, sorry, you've got the fully flat with the smaller side edge there, the fully round, and then you've got the smaller triangle file there as well. They do come in a set of about 8, I believe, but they are quite good at getting into places that you can't necessarily get into with your hobby knife, or actually getting fully flat feet as well. And so, as I said, we're going to be starting off with the sergeant. And as we go through, we're just going to nice and quickly find the various pieces we need, which is going to be starting off with piece number 1 just here. And so you want to get that flat face on your hobby knife just to be right underneath where it is attached to the sprue. Just very carefully clip it off, and you just work around using nice controlled pressure as you do. And you may find that sometimes you'll have a little bit of flash on the miniature left, but that's okay, because we're going to come back and we're actually going to clean that fully up as we go through. So let us nice and quickly get all the pieces that we need for the sergeant for this unit. Alrighty, so now that we have got all the various pieces clipped off the sprue for the Assault Intercessor Sergeant, what we're actually going to do is we're going to grab one of the bases and we'll put the rest off to the side for the time being. You'll actually see that in the middle of the base, you've actually got a small raised nub about, it's about up to 5 mil. And so I actually like to get in there with my hobby knife. Just nice and easily, I use the bevel and just angle it off the side of the base, and I just get in there and just scrape that off. So what that does is that it means that when I go to put basing material within that actual section, I'm not having to fight against it in terms of the terrain pieces that I'm putting on there or the basing material, so that it's nice and clean whilst it is a divot. At the same time, I'm actually able to have that nice and cleanly cleared out, ready to go, so it just gets filled with sand, and then we can put flock or something over the top of it as well. So that base is all ready to go, and you'll notice that I use the hobby knife in a bit of an interesting way. So I was just holding it in terms of just using the angle of the actual lip of where that divot's in, and just angle it in, and I was just using that as we go with my thumb against the blade, and the rest of it sitting on that top crease, above that middle crease of my palm, I should say, and just moving that around as well. So now when it comes to cleaning up the various parts of the Assault Intercessor, I tend to go piece by piece and get it entirely clean. So what I'll do is I'll start off with one of the hobby files. I actually start off with this first piece, which is the majority of the torso and the majority of one of the legs. And what I'll do is I'll just start filing away just to get the base of this little peg that slots into the base nice and clean. And you'll see there's some files, so you can just kind of blow that off and then come in with your hobby knife and just clean up that extra flashing around the edges as well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go around each of the various parts of the model, and just as we go, we just start off with one side. We're going to work our full way around until we get back to the peg. Now, something that you will find that you may have to do is actually rotating the model as you go, so that you're able to get into various areas. And you'll notice that I'm only doing a small amount of cleaning before I actually wipe off that area, and then I'm able to keep on going as I'm cleaning up the next area. I do a mix of scraping towards myself and scraping away from myself, but you'll notice that I use my index finger to hold the pressure on as I'm cleaning on the actual blade itself, and pull it towards where my thumb is, and I keep that actually pretty close. I find that this technique actually works quite well, so that it doesn't stop it from slipping out of my fingers and coming towards my body, because then I've also got the control that it's not going to be pushed any further past my actual thumb. And so there we go. We've got that first piece fully cleaned, all ready to go. And we're just going to put that up the top so that we know that that piece has been fully cleaned. And so now we're going to pick up the next piece, and we're just going to do the same thing over again. So I'm going to start off over the side. So you can see we've got a big amount of flash kind of left over from where the clippers clipped it from the sprue. So what we're going to do is just use the flat of the blade this time and just kind of cut off that extra bit of flash, and just kind of slowly shave it off, small pieces at a time, so that then it's a bit easier to then come in with the flat of the blade and carve off the remainder of the flash that's there, and make it look as though it should for the actual model. And when we get up to undercoating this guy, that will not look as though it is different from the actual physical model on the box itself. Now, there will be some spots like the top of the backpack that will be a bit harder. You will need to get the edge of the hobby knife in between the two top nubs, and that will allow you to kind of cut underneath the flash that's on there, whilst also not risking taking off too much detail. Now, depending on how deep you may carve it, you'll also find that as you go, that you may need to shave off a little bit more than you originally anticipated, because it would leave amount of detail that would be noticeable after the undercoat on the miniature as you've cleaned up. So just by making sure that you've gone through nice and thoroughly on every single piece and making sure that you've done the best job that you can on each piece as well is always going to be an important factor. And then the last piece that we're going to work on is the chainsword, and now this is going to be a bit of a trickier beast, because what you've got all these teeth that you're going to need to work through individually, which is where the hobby knife is going to do some absolute amazing work for you, whilst also trying to maintain the actual shape of the teeth. So you really want to make sure that as you're doing the teeth, you're getting in there with the tip of the knife and not necessarily the small section of the knife as you go through. So you're just carving off that top little section, you're not carving off too much as you go down around, making sure that you're not losing too much of that tip, but at the same time that you are absolutely getting it done. And sometimes you may find just doing all the downstrokes and going over the tops of the teeth first, and then coming back up, doing the undersides of the teeth might work better. That's generally how I personally do it, because then it's like I find it's a lot easier, and I'm able to wipe off the flash off the top ends first, and then come back around and do the undersides. All right, so we have just completed cleaning up all of the various areas for the Assault Intercessor. Now you can see we've got a whole heap of flashing that is actually on the cutting board we are using. So what we're actually going to do, and this is a hobby trick that I like to use that a lot of people don't actually use or make use of or think of. So I actually grab a lint roller and I'll actually go over my surface that I've been working on if it doesn't stick to it fully, as you would have just seen with the movement. And what it'll do is that with a couple of passes, you'll be able to grab all of those plastic shavings off of the cutting surface, or your painting area that you have been using to actually clean up the model on, and that way you could just pop it into its storage and it's all safe, and you just pop that off to the side, and then you've actually got a clean surface ready to go for the next model you're trying to assemble, so you're not actually getting flash all over the miniatures. Alright, so there have been some quick tips on how to take the various pieces for your miniatures off your sprue, as well as cleaning them up using various tools from hobby files and hobby knives primarily, whilst also using something you might not expect in a lint roller to actually clean up your area after you've cleaned up a miniature with all of those plastic shavings all over the place that you are maybe going to keep on building more models on, or you might actually start assembling and then painting the miniature straight away. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking through this entire video for the first video of the new series of From Sprue to Tabletop. It's going to be great to see the progression from getting the miniature off the sprue to getting it assembled, discussing things like sub-assemblies, which we'll be talking about in our next video as well, and getting it undercoated, base coated, then touch-ups, all things like that, right the way up to washes, edge highlights, basing techniques, and the like as well. And we're just going to go through a heap of different models and show you various techniques in this series and my approach to them as well, and kind of explain them. So I hope that you have found this helpful. If you do enjoy the content that we are creating here on the ATWN, from the tournament reports, from our tournament coverage we do across the Australian Southeastern region, or these kind of videos more hobby focused, or the For the New Guys series, or any of the 10th ed content we're going to be coming out with after the 10th edition has been released for Warhammer 40k, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you're able to be informed about the videos we are creating here on the ATWN. Also, if you do want to catch any of the hobbying I do live on the ATWN, or some of the tournament coverage we do across the Australian Southeastern region, then head over to our Twitch channel, which is Australis TWN, and you can drop a follow over there. Turn on that notification bell as well so you're notified as to when we are going live with either our hobbying or our gaming content over there as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.